Are we live? Yes, we are. 2 minutes late. My apologies. And my apologies also that I'm not feeling my absolute best, mostly because of a very sad puppy in my house. So apologies for running a little bit late, and we may not go the full distance today, but I'm going to give you as much value as I can on the topic of digital twins. So if you're here for the Squirtle Squadron on digital twins, you're at the right place. If you're here to watch somebody play video games, that's the wrong place. So go somewhere else. All right. We had a few questions on this topic, which I'll try to cover, but I'd sure like questions from you guys. So please put in the chat, wherever you're watching me, what brought you to this topic? It's a relatively new topic to me. So unlike some things I talk about, I'm not a super expert on this topic, but I have seen some of my clients using digital twins. I have an opinion on where those are going. And I would love some questions and some vigorous discussion here, including people who might want to disagree with me. So I'd really appreciate that. Say hi in the chat. Let me know what was your main interest. What's your main question? Sometimes we get a lot of questions ahead of time for these. This time we didn't. So, but there's quite a number of you signed up. So please tell me what you're most interested in here, and I will cover it as best I can. Some of you may not know who I am or what the Squirrel Squadron is. Hi, I'm Squirrel. This is my community of tech and non-tech people cooperating together to make tech insanely profitable. And it's all free. Laura, our community manager, has put up some of the upcoming events. So we have why you should read code, even if you're not a coder. How to do run books and checklists and run your business more efficiently. Those are events coming up in the rest of March. And then over on the forum, we have all kinds of interesting topics about project management with comments from people around the world on how to do that. On what else do we have? Oh, the glide path method, like building software without a roadmap. All kinds of fun things that we're talking about all the time on the forum. And, there's thousands of people in there. So a great place to ask your questions. Speaking of questions, put them in the chat. I don't mind if I just talk for a while, tell you about some things I think are cool, and I go away. That's okay with me because I have fun and I learn a lot. I already learned a lot by checking out this topic that you guys requested. But what I'd even rather do is answer your specific questions. So please put them in the chat. I would love to help you out. And by the way, if you're watching this on the recording, hello from the past, hello in the future. And a great place to put your questions is on the Squirrel Squadron forum, which is right down there at squirrelsquadron.com. Okay, well, let's launch into this topic. And please do put your questions in. What I want to start with is something, again, I find these things and I can't source them. So I was trying to find the specific link I had for this one, and I can't find it, but I know it's accurate. I want to talk to you about SpaceX, and I think right this moment, as we're speaking, there's a space Starship on the launch pad, and its engines are spewing gases, and they're testing it, and they're going to try to launch it and probably blow it up again. Musk just loves making these very expensive multi-million-dollar fireworks shows. And of course, what he's doing is, and what all of SpaceX is doing, is learning very, very quickly. They're getting around their OODA loop. Go look up OODA loop if you want to hear lots more about why they're trying to learn so quickly, why they are okay with failing in this way. But the thing you probably don't know is there's an awful lot of failures that happen on the ground. And the SpaceX folks have done something very interesting that they call, I couldn't find this phrase, so I might have the wrong phrase. Apologies if I haven't got it quite right. But essentially, it's a Starship on a table. And so they have a great big table with all the sensors and all the equipment and so on, but it's not on an actual rocket. And it's all hooked up to through wires and so on, as if it were on the rocket. And they launch the rocket by having all these different components talk to each other and simulate the effect of launching Starship. Now, the reason that this is so valuable is you don't have to launch an actual rocket. You don't have to blow anything up. You don't need permission from aviation authorities. You don't need to go clean up pieces that fell into the ocean. And you can learn an awful lot about how your sensors talk to each other, how they deal with different types of vibration and different types of inputs and so on that might happen during an actual rocket launch. And you can fail a lot, right? and you can zip around that OODA loop. I should mention what that stands for. It's observe, orient, detect, and adjust, if I remember right. Forgive me if I get one of those wrong. But the idea is that you observe what's happening, you figure out what it means, you decide what to do about that, and then you change what you're doing. Well, if you can do that really quickly without having to wait a year to launch a rocket, but instead every, several times in an afternoon by virtually launching your rocket, you're going to learn an awful lot more. You're going to get it much quicker. A hardware table. Thank you, Roland. I knew somebody would know it. Roland, if you happen to find a link to that, I'd sure like to point people to it to read more about it. Oh, here's Roland read my mind. Roland is always so helpful. That's the one. Okay, I knew it was on a forum somewhere. It was on Reddit, not Hacker News. Okay, thank you, Roland. We'll put that link. Laura, can you help me remember? Let's put that link on the follow-up email and the post on the website on the forum. So this is how SpaceX creates not a digital twin. So this isn't a digital twin. This is a kind of a test rig, which is really what digital twins are. And so I'm going to take a thesis here, a less informed thesis than I sometimes have, because I haven't had a client actually using these products, but I have followed them closely and I'm very interested in them. And I think that they're just test rigs and models dressed up. So it's a nice, fancy, amazing name for a modern version of something my father would have done. So let me take you way back into history. There's a mathematical model that people would have worked with for a long time to help retailers understand what happens in their shops, or banks understand how their tellers service people. The model, the theory, is called queuing theory. And if you go look up all about how this works, it tells you that if you have a certain number of stations, and then customers arriving at a certain rate, and they have a certain amount of time to be serviced at those stations. These could be tills at a grocer. These could be bank tellers handing out cash. They could be any kind of system where you have multiple service locations and customers of some variety arriving at each one. And there's a whole theory about how you should do this. And it is actually quite complicated and interesting, and people do simulations and really try to discover what the optimal number is. Should I have 4 tills in my grocer? If I add a 5th till, sometimes it'll make it slower because more people queue for different tills, and so the queues get shorter, but people are still waiting. And adding the 5th till in the wrong way or at the wrong time doesn't actually help. It actually hurts the efficiency of the whole system. So there are these sort of counterintuitive results that you get from actually testing and simulating and creating some theory based on a model. And of course, the model oversimplifies things. A real grocer has aisles for people to go, lanes for people to go in to pay for their groceries. And maybe one of them is a little farther away, or it has a spill in front of it. And so people slide as they go through it, or they don't want to go to it, or the person at that the person at that till has a mean look on their face, so nobody wants to get in their queue. The theory doesn't take account of any of this. And if you make a digital simulation, you're not going to simulate a person who looks mean. That's just not going to be part of your simulation. If you're a normal person, if you're slightly strange, you might create such a simulation, but you're unlikely to do that. You're trying to abstract away these sort of individual inconveniences and spills and mean people and so on. You want to just see, if I have 4 tills and everybody arrives exactly every 3 minutes, can I get people through faster than if I have 3 tills? Now, that's also what happens with SpaceX's simulation, right? So they put the hardware on the table, they make a version of a spaceship, and they have it fail. Well, they know perfectly well that, if some birds fly in the route of the rocket, or if a rogue signal, a cosmic ray comes in and causes something to happen that's unexpected, or any one of 1,000 other kinds of things that might happen in the real world, then their simulation might be invalid. In other words, it might not account for everything that could happen. But they don't care, because, of course, you're making a model and you're trying to determine whether it works or not. So people have been doing this kind of thing for a very long time, before they even had computers, in the case of queuing theory. But, my father was a software developer at the Aluminium Company of America, and was modeling factories and trying to work out how much bauxite, that's the ore that aluminium comes from, how much bauxite could you get to arrive at a certain rate, and then which refinery processes should it go through, how many pipes should we have, how big should the pipes be. And these are the kinds of things people have been modeling and trying to understand using computers for a very, very long time. They didn't call this stuff digital twins. So now I'm going to say more about what the digital twin folks say they're doing. And I would love some questions and challenges, especially if we have any digital twin fans in the audience, because I may have some of this wrong. I'd be willing, as I always am, to learn more from you guys and refine my opinion. But what the digital twin folks claim is that they account for a lot of the detail, and that it's in real time. So you have, for example, I learned from a very good friend of mine, Gene Moran, about some of his clients in the defense industry in the US who make digital twins of carriers and tanks and things like that. We kind of care about their integrity, right? They get hit by a bullet or a bomb or a torpedo or something. We want to understand, is this thing got a hole in it? Is it going to sink? Is it going to stay up? Is it going to be operable? What sorts of events does it have? And we'd rather not shoot any actual torpedoes at it, right? So what they do is they create this digital twin of the piece of equipment, and they virtually shoot things at it to figure out what might go wrong and what's actually happening. And then they tie it up to the actual item, the actual carrier, the actual tank in the field, and they use those sensors to detect what's happening with it. I don't claim this is tremendously, I would not see this as tremendously innovative beyond simply refining the kinds of simulations that my father would have done. Because if you shoot a virtual torpedo at a virtual carrier, you're going to miss out some of the reality, some of the real world obstacles that might make that worse. The temperature of the water, or the configuration of the ship that might be different than what you expected, and so on. So your simulation is never going to match the reality, but you don't care. It gives you a chance to get around the OODA loop much faster, make decisions and change your mind much more quickly, and fail faster. And that's a very useful thing, which we've been able to do for a very long time. Let me point to another example. Renault makes a big deal out of building cars using digital twins. And what they describe, if you go read about it and if you go check out what they're actually doing, is they're using computer-assisted design, which people have been using for a long time. Now, they would then say, well, actually, also we can simulate. It's not just that we can draw a pretty picture of our amazing new car and a picture of a person sitting inside it. We can actually simulate how that car will drive. Yes, you can do that. But here's my objection to that. Here's where I think that's overblown. Because what you have to do is a huge amount of very specific simulation work, which is absolutely valuable. It's a perfectly good, useful thing to do. But you shouldn't think that you can just spin one up. You're not going to go to digitaltwin.com and put in a few parameters about a car. This isn't a language model where you can just type in, oh, yes, make me a car with the 5 seats and this type of wheel and this type of engine, and show it to me on the screen and simulate it, have it actually drive, put it in a virtual wind tunnel, get feedback about how it actually operates. That's an awful lot of very bespoke, very complex software development by a team who is going to create a simulation for you. That's a great thing to do, but the digital twin folks seem to be saying, oh, this is the new world, this is what we need to do, this is going to revolutionize how industry works. We've been making those simulations for a very long time. So I don't see where all the hype is. My title here was Gold or Gimmick. I think there's gold in there for sure, but it's mostly a gimmick. It's mostly taking simulations that we've been doing for a long time and the abstractions that we've made of all kinds of items, from my father's factory to queuing theory to SpaceX hardware on a table. All of those things are really digital twins in one form or another, that we just have a more developed version of it. So I don't see something revolutionary and different in this world, nor do my clients, which is why I haven't had, although I've had a number of manufacturing clients, folks working in these areas, even somebody in space doing optimization for the factories that create the spaceships. But those folks do not create digital twins. And the reason is that it's very, very expensive. And although it has a tremendous benefit, this is kind of like building a moon rocket, right? And even Mr. Musk isn't trying to get to the moon yet. He's just trying to build a ship and try to get to orbit, and blowing up lots of them on the way. So the investment that you would make in something like the Apollo missions is equivalent. It's the same sort of thing as creating a digital twin, as far as I can see. I'd love to hear about a cheap one. I haven't been able to find one. And because there's so much value to get from simpler simulations, what I find my clients doing in these areas is creating the old style of simulation. They don't try to hook up real-time sensors from an actual object to a complex system, try to simulate the entire operation and account for all the specific accidents of reality that might occur. They just make a quick simulation. They deal with the issues that they're looking for. They do the abstraction that you see in queuing theory, for example, and that's good enough for them. And I think it's probably good enough for you. Okay, so there's a nice provocative view on this buzzword, digital twin. I would love to hear that I'm wrong, because I bet there are some folks out there who think, hey, wait a minute, Squirrel, I'm using a digital twin. That's really useful to me. And I would love to hear from you, whether you're watching this on the recording. Just head on over to squirrelsquadron.com and tell me I'm wrong. Or if you're here live, feel free to throw in your comments in the chat. Now, we did have a few questions before we got started. Let me find those. Have I lost them? I don't think I have. I had them here a moment ago. Apologies. Talk amongst yourselves while I find them. I don't know why that's missing all of a sudden. And that's not the right place. Drat. Here it is. Okay, good. I knew I had it. Laura got it set up for me. She did it. She did everything. Let's see. Roland comments that this is in use in pharma, in biotech, and absolutely true. I have several clients who are doing things, very, very clever things with virtual versions of molecules and proteins and so on. And what they're trying to do there is discover new drugs. And I've had one in San Francisco has been tremendously successful at finding meaningful drugs for very significant diseases that are now in clinical trials. The advantage of doing this kind of thing virtually is, of course, you don't have to kill any mice or put in danger any humans by putting these chemicals into actual biological systems. You can simulate. Now, when you simulate, of course, you don't get the right answer. And that's just like Musk with his spaceship on a table, or the queuing theory folks trying to match a retail environment and figure out about where to put tills and so on. Those folks are not trying to be accurate. They're not trying to account for every possibility. They're trying to get a model that is a simplified version of reality to save them money and get them get their early failures out of the way quickly. And that's what pharmacology folks are trying to do as well. The big pharma folks who are doing protein folding and all kinds of very clever stuff with artificial intelligence, they're, of course, working with those tools in order to check whether something is feasible. But when they actually put it in a real human, it might have an unexpected side effect, and that the simulation is not going to catch that. And I think this term digital twin gives us kind of too much, it gives us too strong a impression, Roland, that we're going to match everything. We're going to get every detail right. The whole point is to cut out the right bits. And that's where the software innovation really is. You're going to have quite clever software folks building simulations that ignore, say, the effect of wind resistance on a car because you just want to know whether the door will open. And that's the art of creating a very effective software solution, software mechanism of testing your proposed product, whatever it might be. Let's see. So Niall, old friend, asks about orchestration processes. Versioning as infrastructure grows over time. So Niall, I haven't seen that, but that's because of my previous comment that I'm just not seeing a ton of folks using this outside of very, very large institutions that are making sort of moonshot level investments. And even those folks, I'm not sure they're getting the right value. So what I do see is at these lower levels of simulation, the clever folks, sorry, I just knocked something off my desk. The clever folks are certainly versioning very carefully, and increasingly they're versioning the hardware. So, I was just looking at a company that has some very interesting aircraft hardware. They're tracking items in the sky and making sure they're all not running into each other, which is a very helpful thing to do. And they have careful versioning and careful tracking of the bill of materials they create, the suppliers they're using, the mechanisms. They were just showing me these amazing checklists they use for verifying that the hardware actually works the way it's supposed to and it's being constructed right and so on. And they're going to outsource a lot of that. So they're doing that very carefully with very carefully versioned documents and thorough testing, kind of like the hardware on a table at SpaceX. So that's not emerging. We've been doing that for a very long time, even before computers. People in the hardware space were being very careful with their documentation and their versioning of what they're building. Am I seeing this in digital twins? No, because I'm not seeing a lot of digital twins. That was the interesting thing. So, a bunch of you requested this topic, and my main observation is that there's not a lot of there. So now I'm sorry I don't have examples of really effective orchestration or analysis of digital twins and their versioning for you, because I'm not seeing it that much. Maybe you are, in which case you could tell me. I know you have some new things going on in your career. So if you want to tell me, go ahead and comment on squirrelsquadron.com. Okay, so I'm not seeing a lot of questions, and I'd love to see them after. I know some folks are in parts of the world where this time is not convenient. You guys are sleeping. So if you want to ask your questions, head on over to the forum and ask there. I'll just conclude with one story that I heard when I was on a recent podcast, and then I'll give you all back the balance of your time. After having bashed digital twins for half an hour, I don't feel I need to do more. David Kirby, a late arriving comment, says he's reminded of the Phillips machine, pumping water between tanks to simulate the UK economy. David, this is fascinating. Okay, yes, a really great example, and thank you, David. I appreciate that. I did not know about that one. And David's given a link, which we'll share. Again, Laura, let's make sure these links are in the follow-ups so people can check them out as well. Actually simulating the economy of Britain using water being pumped between tanks. Not unreasonable, right? Because what we do sometimes is we pump more water, more money into the money supply. We drain more out by buying things from other countries and so on. So I can certainly see how that would be a useful pre-digital computer. I guess that's an analog twin, right? It's not digital, it's analog, because water is not digital. It's an analog element. But I just wanted to tell one story here in closing, which I heard about from a host on a podcast I was on recently. And he said, without using the term digital twin, again, we've been doing these things for a long time. He said, way early in my career, many, many years ago, he had encountered a company that had managed to figure out how you could test cars without actually building the cars. A digital twin, right? The same kind of thing. And that he had found that they had a lot of trouble selling it to Detroit. The people who made cars were not kind of ready for this innovation, because they kind of believed when they had an actual car and they could crash it into a wall and they could say, look, the mannequin inside survived. That was telling them enough. That was what they believed. And there was a real mental block for people in adopting the digital version of it. And I think calling it a digital twin would have hurt them rather than helped them. And that's my final message to you is, calling something a digital twin gives it, I think, too much cachet, gives it too much credit. And what I'd rather say is what I have here is a simulation. It only simulates part of what I'm trying to measure and what I'm trying to test and get feedback on. David says there's one of these Phillips machines in the Science Museum. Amazing. I had no idea. I have to go see it. But the problem is that if you claim that you have a fully faithful copy a version of your software or your hardware or your factory or whatever it is that you're working with, if you claim you have a fully faithful one, first of all, you're lying and you're misleading yourself and others, and you're not giving yourself accurate feedback. What's much more helpful is to build an abstraction of what it is that you're actually working with, like the queuing theory, like the Phillips machine, the water flowing around to simulate money in the UK economy. These abstractions are really useful if you remember what their limits are. And if you try to claim that you've got something that simulates all the little vagaries, all the little differences that might occur in your object, you're not going to win that battle, and you're going to mislead whoever it is that's funding your operation. So caution with digital twins is my message for today. Well, I hope you've all found that helpful. And sorry I didn't have as much material this time, but it's simply because I'm not seeing a lot of adoption of this in this area. Love for somebody to disagree with me. Where's the place to disagree? That's squirrelsquadron.com. You find it right down there. Weekly newsletter with all kinds of debates and discussions. That's, that kind of discussion is what led to this session as well as others. We're going to be posting new events for April and around Easter. So more free events like this one, more discussion on the forum. All the exciting stuff continues on squirrelsquadron.com. And I'm glad to have been with you, and would love to see you in a couple of weeks when we'll be doing our next free event, which, if I remember right, is on why you should be reading code even if you don't know binary. Okay, I'll see you there, and lovely to have you. All models are wrong. Some models are useful. I couldn't end it any better than that. Have a lovely day, everybody.